show. Go, 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 go. I'm I. What up, Z-Pack? It's your boy Z-Dog MD and your boy Tom Heineber on the mic. Logan apparently gets Saturday off because lazy millennials. Do I get a day off? No. 7 days a week, 8 weeks a day, whatever the math is. Speaking of math, today, guys, we're talking about something pretty insane, the nature of reality itself. But more importantly, Tom, how it relates to Health 3.0, this new system of medicine we're trying to build together. Let me do some splaining, okay? Health 3.0 is this idea that we look at the entire person, not just their cells and their body, but we look at their community, their environment. We look at interactions between themselves and their family and others in this web. We look at their interactions between them and the caregivers. But then we also look at their interiors, their conscious experience, everything from the placebo effect to the mind-body connection, meditation, etc. It all has to do with interior conscious experience. So why is it in Health 1.0 and 2.0 we completely discount the conscious experience? We reduce it to a series of chemical reactions in the brain. Is that what it is, or are we getting even the question of what creates consciousness entirely wrong? And that's what I want to talk about today, because I saw an article entitled, and I put the link in the description, Is Matter Conscious? Is matter conscious? Let me back up. For many, many years, many lives of men, Tom Heineber, we have been trying to figure out how it is that inanimate goo in the brain, cells and matter and electrons and goo, generate the experience of the color red. In other words, what's it like to see red? I see a little red light on my camera there. It looks red to me. First of all, who is this me that is having this experience, and what is the nature of the red that I'm seeing? Does Tom see the same red I see? Does it even matter? The fact that I am aware of red makes me uniquely capable of saying I am aware and conscious. And that in itself is something only I can say, because Tom cannot measure my awareness of the color red. He can measure different perceptions and things like that, but he cannot measure whether I am actually experiencing red. That is mine, right? So the question is, how does matter, atoms, generate this magical experience? And scientists have no freaking clue. And it relates to medicine very importantly, because we have this thing called the mind-body connection, which has been increasingly shown to affect physical states, illness, etc. Meditation, you can put a Buddhist monk in an MRI scanner and they light up different parts of the brain than someone who is not meditating. We've shown that meditation in particular, which is an intrinsic, conscious, subjective experience, can rewire the physical properties of your brain. So what's going on? Is the brain generating consciousness as a kind of a weird epiphenomenon or field? And if it does that, how? This has been described as the hard problem of consciousness, literally the hard problem of consciousness, by a philosopher or scientist named David Chalmers. And it's called the hard problem because no one can figure out how to make that leap from a bunch of atoms organizing in the brain and suddenly I am, right? So one interesting twist on that it's come up, and it's I can't say it's new because philosophers have been sort of positing this for millennia, including the Buddhists, Christian mystics, Sufi mystics in the tradition of Islam. It's been a pan-religious experience. Could it be that we're asking the question wrong and that we have it all backwards? That instead of the brain somehow generating the field of awareness that makes us us, that makes me feel pain and pain feels a certain way, or biting those biscuits at Red Lobster has a certain type of savory experience that I can describe, but only I can experience.
Shameless callback.
Shameless callback to Doc Vader. Are we backwards? Is it the consciousness, the awareness itself, that is actually generating the scaffolding that forms the physical structures of cells, the brain, planets, awareness, and that delicious biscuit itself? And that's what this particular article, Is Matter Conscious, is positing. It goes back to a theory called panpsychism, which is everything, even atoms, have some degree, they're created out of awareness itself, out of conscious experience. I mean, does that sound crazy to you?
Is panpsychism the same theory as biocentrism?
Biocentrism is a Deepak Chopra kooky extreme that takes... So we should distinguish this, and we'll go through the theory, but biocentrism says basically that consciousness creates the universe, not the other way around. So if I am, a conscious entity, then I am generating the universe just by, thinking about it, creating it, and it's not the other way around. Now that is a more new agey kind of, in my opinion, kooky way of looking at this issue of panpsychism. But let's back up and let's try to reconstruct why this might be a valid theory of why the universe works this way, why it's important to medicine and the human experience, and Health 3.0 in particular. So let's take a look. And by the way, Clint Davis put a comment in here, I think, therefore I am. That was a statement based on the old way of thinking, which is the reductionist scientific physicalism, which says matter creates brains which are wired a certain way, which create thinking, which therefore I am because I'm able to think. This theory actually posits, and this is called, what is it called? Dual monism or something. I have to see exactly what they call it. It doesn't really matter. This idea that consciousness is the substrate on which everything is built. It posits I am, therefore I think. So in other words, awareness is the fundamental thing. We are all consciousness, and therefore the brain arises and everything else arises as an expression of consciousness, and we think using that, and we're aware of thinking, but we are not thinking. So I know it gets crazy. Let's back up and go through it. Tom, what do you think while I pull this up?
Before you dig too deep, are you postulating that the brain is an antenna for consciousness, or the brain is sort of like a software program that works with the underlying hardware?
What we're positing is, think of it this way. The current scientific reductionism says that the brain somehow, through integrating information, through some kind of processing that nobody understands, through complexity that nobody understands, somehow generates an awareness of self and a feeling of this is red and this tastes like chocolate. Those awarenesses, those feelings, by the way, are called in philosophical and scientific circles qualia. They're qualitative subjective experiences that people have. Now the thing is, the hard problem of consciousness says, how can that happen? How can dumb matter, atoms, if this is true, if physical reductionism is true, that everything is really just made of matter, the universe is a physical dead thing, but somehow when it organizes a certain way, it generates, listen to my kids screaming by the way, it generates a field of consciousness. There's no way to explain that. And now some argue that our brains just simply aren't complex enough to understand how that could happen. And then others argue, well, no, what it is maybe there's a fifth property of matter, like a consciousness photon that we haven't measured yet, that's a part of every atom, and when enough of them get together, we generate consciousness, right?
I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson once say that the universe has no responsibility to make sense to you.
Suck it, universe. Yes, you do. Okay? Yes, you do. I'm a believer that we can figure everything out, honestly. And that's why I'm excited by this theory, because what it says is we've just been looking at the problem wrong. It's not that we can't figure it out. It's that we have it totally backwards. Like when Einstein said, hey, time and space are actually plastic based on the observer, based on a conscious observer. When Bohr and the quantum mechanics guy said, you know what, a particle doesn't settle into its spot, the waveform doesn't collapse of probability until a conscious observer observes it. What does that say? It says somehow consciousness is at the core of this. And if we can unwind what that means, we might actually understand a lot better how things work, and then understand better how we treat patients. And I'm extrapolating, but if the conscious experience is fundamental, then maybe we should really pay attention to it when we're taking care of physical, what we think are fundamentally atomic and molecular diseases. So let me back up and try to explain. Anything you want to add, Tom, before I do that?
No, just that I think you're wrong.
Of course. And I think a lot of people are going to think I'm wrong, and that's what I love about it.
No, I just think that you'll never know everything. That it's just fractal. It goes on forever, and then you just die.
I think it's knowable. I just think we're always striving towards it, and it keeps expanding every time we learn more. More happens. And here's a great example. So now this is what this article posits. We'll go back to the beginning. The problem of consciousness, how is consciousness generated? What's it made of? What is it? How do we make it? Is mirrored in physics by the hard problem of matter. Let me explain. An atom is made up of, electrons, protons, neutrons. Those are made up of quarks, which may be made up of strings, gluons, mesons, whatever the heck they are, right? And it keeps going down and down and down. Every time we keep looking, we find more structure. We find more relationships between forces. We find that an atom is solid because it repels other atoms at a certain distance. These are nothing but mathematical abstractions of relationships between objects. The question that we've never answered is, what is the object? In other words, what is the fundamental makeup? What is this stuff made of? What is a string that's vibrating? What is energy? Nobody can figure it out. Now, what this article posits is that's because there isn't anything there except for awareness, consciousness itself. In other words, if you're trying to find the stuff that the universe is made of, as good a candidate as anything is consciousness. And the example given is this. So in other words, an electron is just an expression of a little bundle of awareness, and it looks like an electron to other bundles of awareness that look like protons. And the way they relate to each other is the way one experience would relate to another. And they just show up to us as a big bundle of experience as electron, proton, etc. But there's no such thing as a solid piece of matter. It's all consciousness all the way down, which means consciousness is the coin of the realm. It is the structure of the universe, and the brain, as complex as it is simply an expression of multiple bits of awareness all colluding together, and then somehow there's a combination effect that generates a big field of awareness, which is us. Complex thoughts, all the inner life that we have, right? So why would this even be? Well, think about somebody who's never seen the color red. They've never seen it, so it's not relational to anything they've ever seen. They could hallucinate in their mind's eye, because all they have is their mind's eye, they don't have a physical eye,
right,
something that looks like red. And that experience of red is a fundamental, indivisible property of reality. In other words, red is red. So as an experience, it's not made of anything else. It's just red as a subjective experience. So why couldn't that be the fundamental structure of everything, just on a different level? That's what this article kind of posits. It's very hard to explain.
So you're saying that if a blind person thinks they're experiencing red, that's red, and that's consciousness?
It's made, what is red? I mean, even when I see red right there, it's me knowing the color red, being aware of it. It's nothing more than that.
Right, like we
There's
never...
there are red photons. Well, what's a red photon, really?
Right.
If you drill down, you can't see it. In fact, the farther you drill, then quantum mechanics gets weird, and you just keep looking for matter and you never really find it. So the question is, are we even asking the question wrong? Is matter an expression of this fundamental reality that it's all awareness? And if you start looking at it that way, then you can even look at the brain and go, well, the brain is really, it's a series of relationships between bits of consciousness that somehow combine to form a global unified consciousness. There's a researcher named Donald Hoffman who actually has equations that he's working out that say, oh, look, different conscious entities can actually interact with each other and they can sum to form bigger unified conscious entities. And those equations look just like the equations of quantum mechanics that determine a particle's probability wave. So it kind of all weirdly reduces. Now, this is all preliminary and it could all be bullshit.
Isn't that, that slightly reminds me of, you know, how we're made of hundreds of trillions of bacteria.
Right.
But we are this one thing. I would just call you Zubin.
Right.
I wouldn't say, hey, that's this guy I hang out with. He's actually made of hundreds of trillions of bacteria.
Exactly. And then here's another question. If this is true, if we're just the sum of different conscious entities, think about it this way. When you actually cut a brain in half, cut the corpus callosum, the connection between the brains, each hemisphere is independently conscious. And you can actually test this and show that the right side is independently aware of the left side. And you can trick each side of your body into doing different things, and they don't communicate.
Well, you can cut half the brain out of a person early enough.
Oh, and they still do fine.
If they're young,
Yep.
and then they'll be a totally normal person.
Yeah. So the idea that consciousness is maybe the sum of different things, and that corpus callosum somehow allows it to integrate better. But really, each hemisphere is independently aware and conscious, starts to make you think, is there something, instead of the brain generating consciousness, could it be consciousness in its complexity generating the appearance of brain, right? The experience of brain.
Right.
Let's read some comments before we go on, because I think it's going to confuse a lot of people, and honestly, this stuff will hurt your brain, but it's just a way, if you just start by thinking, well, okay, I'm going to try to look at things differently and see if it makes any sense that maybe the fundamental stuff is consciousness. And because the idea that conscious experiences are just the kind of things that physical structures could fundamentally be made of is one of the things posited in the article. That it's just that sort of irreducible isness that everything could be made of. And there's nothing else we found that even comes close to that. So could that make sense? Could it then explain quantum mechanics?
Think about it like a dream. Like in a dream, I'm walking in an environment that's entirely created by me.
Right.
For me.
Right.
Right?
Now, a reductionist would say, well, your brain is generating the same kind of consciousness it generates during the day, and it's incorporating memory, and it's using imagination, and so on, and so you're getting that experience. But you're still aware of it. It's still an aware experience, so it's consciousness. And of course, I mean, because the other argument is the world entirely an illusion? This paper says, no, that's not what it is. The world is real because the consciousness that makes it up is real. So in other words, the consciousness that makes up all the cells in your body colludes to form your awareness, and it interacts with me in a real way. But my perceptions are molded by what I'm made of and how I see the world. A squirrel has a different graphical user interface than you or I. So it sees you as a big nut or whatever and tries to eat you, whatever the parameters are of its interface. But it's just as aware.
Right.
Right?
And if that squirrel had lived your life, that squirrel would be you.
I have no idea what you just said, but you must be high AF right now.
Because it's just consciousness just like you are, Z.
Well, the squirrel... So
what makes you more special than the squirrel?
Complexity. So the argument would be that my brain is made of more elements that create a bigger field of awareness. So there are different levels of complexity in consciousness. But even that's called the combination problem. If this is true, if every little piece of matter is just consciousness, how do they sum up to form a unified consciousness as in the human experience? And the truth is that's a hard question to answer, but is it as hard a question to answer as how do freaking dead atoms form the experience of this light shining on me right now that I am having? I guarantee you I am having, right?
Yeah.
So that's really part of the issue. Now let's read some comments and then we'll go back to the article. Boy, these comments are crazy.
I saw somebody saying, is this similar to simulation theory earlier?
Excellent question. So the simulation theory says that we're all living in a simulation and this is all just simulated awareness, and there are many aspects of reality that argue for simulation theory. For example, quantum mechanics, the fact that nothing's really real until you observe it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the interesting thing. Simulation theory and panpsychism, or the dual monism that we're talking about here. In other words, so there's sort of two schools of thought. There's dualism, which says, and this is more religious thinking, that there's matter, which is real, and it's dead, and then there's spirit, which is God, us, angels, devils, and that they're forever separate, but they interrelate with each other. Now, the problem with dualism is no scientist can ever endorse it because you cannot find evidence for spirit, right? And it's a very anti-scientific thing because you can't easily test it. However, monists, in other words, people who feel that everything is one substance that can be explained through one set of laws, they say that, well, the physicalist monists say, well, no, everything is just atoms and somehow consciousness arises from atoms in a way, a complexity that we don't understand, but it's all just dead atoms expressing themselves as an accident. And anything other than that is us being arrogant and saying the universe is anthropomorphic and revolves around humans and we have no business saying that. What do they call it? I better make sure I pull this up because I think it was a great name. They call it, what was it? It wasn't monism, it was, oh, this paper is too long, people, and I'm too old to, so dualism, and then, I can't find it in here.
It's okay, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But the idea that, no, it's still one thing, but that one thing is consciousness.
Michael Davis says, if there is not an ICD-10 code for it, it ain't real.
Now that's the only truism that this universe operates on, Michael. Fact. Read some more comments.
Let's see. Patrick Cox says, sure, we could be in a computer and just be an electronic illusion that are on someone's monitor. Sure, that is possible, but do you really pinch yourself and think that you aren't really a living being in the universe?
I think simulation theory is it's irrelevant. If we're living in a simulation, it makes it no less real an experience for us. And the only thing that's real in this universe, you could argue, is conscious experience. The fact that we are having an experience. That's the only thing that's beyond reproach. It cannot be an illusion because we can disprove it just by existing, by experiencing this light. I know that the very act of experience cannot be an illusion because I'm having an experience. The light may not be there. It may be some totally weird series set of zeros and ones in a simulation, but the fact that I'm experiencing it is beyond doubt because I'm having that experience right now, right? And you're having an experience listening to me talk or seeing my bald head if you're watching the video version of this. So all that being said, a good example here of a good question was Jackie Cinnamon asked, so what does a cell being conscious mean? Now this is where it gets very counterintuitive. Like, what does a cell being conscious mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
So here's how they describe it in the article. Let's look at an electron. Let's make it simple because a cell is complex. A cell may have an additive layer of consciousness, kind of like our brains are a bunch of cells, right? And the fact that we feel our body and our brain as kind of a contiguous thing may just be a summative addition of all the independent little consciousnesses. But what does an electron having an experience mean? The argument here is an electron is just a little bit of experience, and it experiences another electron, and it experiences repulsion, or it experiences attraction to a proton. And that experience is a fundamental property of the universe, the same way the forces are. The way we measure them as a massively complex conscious entity is, oh, look, a magnet does this, or electrons do this in chemical reactions, etc. That's how we see it from a third-person view. But from the first-person view, the electron is actually a little bundle of awareness experience. Not the way we are, where we feel pain and all this. We can't know, right? Because we can't be the electron. But it is made up of awareness. And when you sum up enough complexity in a brain, rather than asking the question, how does the brain then generating this field of awareness? It's a better question is, how is all this awareness summing to generate this unified sense of being that we have?
So the old theory was kind of like brains were like a mesh network creating reality, right? Like brains were all little nodes generating a mesh, and then that mesh was reality.
Well,
is that what everybody thought?
Well, that they're still thinking that in terms of integrated information theory. So it's a mesh that processes information, and somehow that information processing generates self-awareness.
Right.
But here's the question. Nobody can explain how that is. They can't even come close. The closest people come are people like Daniel Dennett, who say consciousness is actually a complex kind of illusion, where it's a series of sensory inputs that fool the brain into thinking I am. But the truth is, I would argue, and others would argue too, that consciousness is the one thing in the universe that cannot be an illusion, because the fact that I'm having an experience is beyond any doubt, because it's self-definition. To have an experience is to have an experience. You are conscious. It is not a lie. Right?
So biocentrism would just be taking this idea and then saying consciousness is special and you can use consciousness at your will, kind of like The Secret or something like that?
So those are aspects of biocentrism, and that's where it gets freaky into like Deepak Chopra and stuff. But there's a guy, I forget his name, he wrote a book called Biocentrism, which I actually read. And his argument is, look, and he's a scientist, Harvard doc, he says the universe has constants, certain parameters, like how the gravitational constant, the speed of light, etc., that are perfectly tuned to support life. Now, there's like 80 constants or something that are perfectly tuned to support life. So is it that that's just luck and we're lucky in this particular universe to then arise, or is it that life was the fundamental thing? In other words, consciousness started everything and it creates the universe through some expression that we don't understand. Honestly, they're very related. The difference is consciousness cannot. The Secret is bullshit.
Did you ever see What the Bleep Do We Know? Did you ever watch that?
I never saw that, yeah.
Yeah, well, they like put words on water bottles. Love, hate. It's like, after a while, the bottle that had hate on it, it turned brown. The bottle that had love stayed icy pure.
This is the problem. So when you start talking about this stuff, the bullshit artists come out of the frickin' woodwork, and every Oprah and Secret Lover and Deepak Chopra comes out and is like, by just thinking good thoughts, we will change the nature of the universe. Now, thinking good thoughts is fantastic, but it's not going to change the nature of the universe. However, Tom Heineber, if we are fundamentally constructed of awareness, then wouldn't it make sense that the mind and the body are not just connected, the mind is the body. And so therefore, how we think of things, the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, which is the opposite of the placebo effect, is where we encounter an adverse reaction because we take a pill or we take some treatment, right? So it's the opposite. Instead of getting the beneficial effect, we get a negative effect.
Laura Tobias says, too much thinking about thinking. I've always had this thought about enlightenment is like, I don't want to be enlightened. I'm here to enjoy the dance, motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be enlightened, Z. I just want to throw this ball at you right now.
You almost turned off the light with that ball. Here's the thing. Thinking about thinking, but this isn't actually thinking about thinking. It's thinking about awareness, which is different than thinking. We have to make sure to define our terms carefully. Awareness is being aware of thinking, of a thought arising. The thought itself may be a mechanistic thing, right? But the awareness of a thought, like think of a cat right now in your head. You just had an experience of a face or a tail or a meow or a fur or whatever of a cat. How the fuck do atoms, dead atoms in your brain interacting with electrical signals, generate that experience? That's the hard problem of consciousness. Until we answer what consciousness is, we have a huge hole in our medical understanding of how human beings work and relate with each other and the world at large. Not to mention all the philosophical, religious, spiritual concerns around what is the nature of awareness, right?
Newar says, what about free will? If everything can be broken down to simpler parts, I'd argue it's hard to prove the existence of free will as we know it. We've had this discussion before about you don't think there is free will.
No, I think science really says free will is an illusion, but does that mean we don't treat each other like we have free will, that we don't hold each other accountable like we have free will? Because that will alter how our non-free people actually behave. So in other words, if there are laws, my brain, my unconscious brain that's making all these decisions unconsciously, where there's the sum total of all this little conscious elements, it's going to make decisions that keep me from going to jail, right? So we need structures that allow people to behave well, but actual free will, the ability to make decisions and really, in other words, I could have acted differently that way. No, you couldn't have.
Crystal Keen wants to know what your thoughts on ayahuasca are. What are your thoughts on ayahuasca, Z?
So I haven't done ayahuasca. DMT, this is the active component of that. And many people have these very profound transitive spiritual experiences where they really get into the nature of all this. Now Tom,
I've done it. It's nuts, peeps.
Please explain. Now we got to hear about this.
Well, when I was in the hyper dimension, number 9, talking to the elf lord Quadron. No, no, I smoked it. I didn't do ayahuasca. I just smoked DMT, which is the main psychoactive substance in ayahuasca.
And what happened?
Literally, I shot out of my body. I had an out of body experience. I was in this hyper geometric world where everything was geometric shapes and colors and everything. And it felt like I describe it as, it felt like I was interfacing with the raw data of reality. And it was very scary.
Was that raw data consciousness? What was it?
I don't know. Could have been consciousness.
Yeah.
Could have been my own consciousness reflected back at me. It was very strange. It's a very strange experience. And really, words don't do it justice. And when you're there in the space, when you've done this drug, you have your perception of time is just like time doesn't exist. You know, not that the experience lasts a really subjectively long time, but that you forgot that time existed. So you're only high for about 15 minutes, but it feels like infinite.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, which again I think gets at the fundamental question of time and space are illusory animal constructs. They're not a true fabric of reality, right? And that gets again to the question of what is the fabric of reality? People have been trying to look at string theory and even math. Math is nothing but an expression of relationships and structure. It doesn't say what the stuff is actually made of. And again, I think as good an explanation as any may be consciousness. Now, how do we actually realize this fact? Like, what does it mean for us? Well, here's the simplest thing. Meditation. Meditation is your way of studying empirically what could perhaps be the fabric of reality itself, which is consciousness, by actually introspecting and being aware of being aware. And it could be as simple as focusing on the breath. It could be as simple as focusing on bodily sensations. You can get into a state where you are really just aware of being conscious. Now, the masters can get into a state where they experience the what they call the light of pure awareness, just consciousness without any objects in it. And that in itself, for many people, is a transformative experience because they realize, so through introspection, the sages throughout history, the mystics, have had this realization that no, it is actually just all consciousness, all the way up and all the way down.
Yeah.
Now, we discount that as scientists because we say, well, we can't measure that, we can't quantify that, you can't look at an fMRI scanner and measure that. The question is, are we thinking about this wrong? Is the measurement, is the science that you do on that the subjective science of introspection and meditation? And many would argue that it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've been getting more into meditating again recently. I just had the epiphany on it that I always thought it was just to clear your mind. And then I sort of finally realized, no, it's just to interrupt that stupid thought process that's going on in my brain all day long.
A good way to look at it for me is that it's not to make your mind a blank slate or try to get rid of thoughts, because that never happens. Well, let me clarify that. That's not the intent. It can happen as a side effect of meditation. The point is to be aware of being aware. In other words, wow, I'm just awareness, and oh, there's a thought, and I see it, and I'm aware of it, or there's a feeling, or there's a weird itch in my butt, and I feel it as this weird vibrating energy field. What is it? It's just this energy field. And the longer you watch it, it quickly disappears, and you realize thoughts and emotions and feelings just arise and disappear. The only constant is the field of awareness in which these things arise. Now, the more you do that, especially if you go on a retreat or something like that, all this radio station noise that's like a radio station on your head on scan, it starts to silence, and pretty soon you do experience what is often described as just pure awareness. You're just aware, and things are arising and disappearing, and it brings a profound sense of peace, and also an understanding that we are not our emotions or our feelings or these transient problems or our fears. We are the awareness, timeless and indestructible, that arises in. And it has a spiritual quality to it, right? No matter how hardcore of a scientist you are. Sam Harris is a good example, hardcore scientist, skeptic, atheist. He loves meditation.
It has a really good practical application, because while I've found that it doesn't make me any more enlightened, because I'm still a total jerk,
Totally.
It helps me interrupt my flow enough that I can, like, you know, not say the thing that's going to ruin the next 48 hours of my marriage, you know? Like, things like that. Like, I can not get mad at the woman who's in front of me in the grocery store because she has too many items in the, in the express lane. Like, the stupid stuff.
That's spot on. I mean, for me, like, a good example for me was, all through my 30s, I was just a bundle of type A, ego, aggression, fear, all of that, and it was all about accomplishment and gathering material possessions and anxiety and inability to sleep and physical manifestations of that, because the mind and the body are connected, right? It's not like The Secret or anything like that. It's just simply, it creates hormones. There's an expression of our anxiety in a physical form.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to deny that. Anyone who works in any kind of medicine sees it in patients all the time. And the extreme of that is somatization. So for me, I was all this bundle, and I identified with my thoughts and my emotions. That's who I was. And my ego was who I am. In other words, I'm this skin-encapsulated self walking through the world trying to fight off fear and danger and death and competitors everywhere I go. What meditation does, and it takes time, is you start to realize, oh shit, that's not what I am at all.
Yeah.
I am all of this stuff, the awareness of all of this, and it all just arises. My ego is just a part of this kind of sense of self that I have, but it's really just something arising in awareness. And that means that woman in line who's like taking forever, you can practice and cultivate a kind of a compassion and a love for a fellow conscious creature having an experience just like you. And it changes everything, really.
Yeah, totally.
But it takes a lot of work. And in healthcare, it's a key capacity, because it gives us compassion.
Except fuck her. She had 16 items. It says 15.
Bitch, it's the express lane.
I counted.
Meditate on that.
What do you do? What do you do for meditation? How do you meditate?
Okay, so I had many different approaches, and I've gone through quite a few of them. I'll tell you what's working for me best right now. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit this because it's kind of like cheesy and Oprah-ish.
Yeah.
But I listened to the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Eckhart Tolle.
Yes, and the thing about him, okay, he's a kooky dude, but his practice of meditation and understanding of reality is actually not far from a good way to look at the world, which is everything exists in the now moment, and the future is just a mental projection, and the past is just a mental regret and etching. And if we live in the moment, that means we have to focus on experiences in the moment. And this is not his idea. This is ancient Buddhist, Hindu sort of wisdom. Sages have been saying this forever.
Yeah.
Even Jesus said stuff like this, right? The Sufi mystics in Islam said stuff like this. And his some of his best meditations are available for free on Spotify. And one of them is called Gateway of the Inner Body. Now this sounds, it's super new agey, and it has the cheesy ass Zamfir, Master of the Panther.
He's got an awesome voice though. It's really like,
Dude,
it's
his
fun to
voice.
listen to him.
So he's like a hole in the universe. If the universe is made of consciousness, he's like a big ass rip in it and another conscious head poking out. And he's like, hey! And the way he talks is like this. And in this tape, he's amazing. He's like, gateway to the inner body. The inner body is a field of aliveness and awareness that can bring us into the present moment. It is very simple. Focus with your eyes closed and hold your hands up and ask yourself, how do I know that my right hand exists? Don't touch it, don't move it. How do I know that my right hand exists? You feel a field of awareness, aliveness in the hand. Now, as you feel that, feel your left hand. And it goes on, and he gets to the whole body, and pretty soon you feel the entire body as this field of vibrating energy.
So you'd like to do guided meditations?
No. He guided it once.
Okay.
Then I remembered it. Then I can bring myself into the state.
So you guide yourself?
I guide myself now, but this is how it went down. This is how I do the meditation now. I'll sit in the semi-lotus position because I'm not flexible enough because I'm stupid. I'll sit in my chair and I'll feel my hand, then I'll feel my left hand, then that feeling will encompass both hands at once and I'll feel it like that. Then my feet will get involved and I'll feel hands and feet together and it'll feel like this one field. Then I feel the entire body as a field. Then something magical happens, and it's not magical. Thinking stops, everything slows down, and you merge, you feel like you are this field of awareness. When you open your eyes, you see everything as it is in the current moment, without labels, without judgment, without thinking. And it is incredible, and it takes a minute to get into that state when you practice it. And you do it for 5 minutes, and you come out ready to fuck shit up for the day. I mean, you're like, all right, I feel great. Like, this is awesome. So that's the simplest thing. There are a million ways to get into this. You can use apps like Headspace, 10% Happier, but check out some of the Eckhart Tolle stuff, because there's something about his voice that gets a lot of people into that state.
Right now what I've been doing is I just do the ram, ram, ram.
Mantra.
The mantra helps me a lot.
How? How does it work?
How does it work for me?
Yeah.
It's just like something that's better for me going back to than my breath.
Yeah.
Maybe
I find
don't
the
know.
breath to be bullshit.
Yeah, I don't
for
like
me.
going back to the breath.
It doesn't work for me because the problem with the breath is it's not as compelling a thing as for me, like whether it's a mantra, ram, or whether it's that repetitive focus. And the way Eckhart Tolle describes it, and it's super pseudoscientific, is all the attention, there's only so much focused attention you can have, right? That's why we can only empathize with one person at a time. We can't empathize with a population or a statistical abstraction. The mind is like a spotlight. Its attention is focused like our macula. We can only see one little piece of thing very sharp. So if you focus all your attention on a physical sensation or a field of awareness in the body or a mantra or the breath, there's not enough focus to pay attention to these stupid ass thoughts that are like the most annoying narrator in your head, constantly telling you, you need to do this, you need to worry about that, you need to do your taxes, oh shit, your wife is mad at you, oh shit, the kids have to go to school. And when that drops
dude,
away,
it's like, have you ever thought about if you had to hang out with the voice in your head, would you hang out with the voice in your head?
I would clown punch him right in the balls.
Yeah.
He is such an asshole.
He's the biggest asshole there is.
He's the biggest asshole.
He's just like, look at you, you're so fat, you're worthless, no one loves you. You know,
Absolutely.
Exactly,
How many people, Z-Pack, have that voice in your head, right? And so to be able to not identify with the voice, that's a huge asset. Let's go through some comments.
To be fair, my voice is also very judgmental of other people.
That's because his voice is a total asshole. Tom's ego, his thought little structure is really quite amazing. By the way, Eckhart Tolle has another concept, I don't know if you know of this one, Tom, called the pain body.
No.
So Tolle's other piece is that we carry around with us this thing called the pain body, which is our collective experience and memory and recollection of pain and trauma and torment and PTSD and all that. And individuals have pain bodies. In other words, I was abused as a child, or I went through, a Fallujah and now I'm scarred, or my mom never treated me right. And you carry that and it influences how you behave in the future. And his point is that the pain body it's a psychic illusion that arises in consciousness, that when you witness it as what it is, you can transcend it and act beyond it. In other words, be free of it. Now, his argument is, and Buddhists have been saying this forever too, his argument is that not only do individuals have a pain body, but society and communities and tribes have collective pain bodies. So you could look at like the trauma of, say, the Turkish genocide and how it affects Turkey's culture now, or the Jewish genocide and how it affects the collective Jewish pain body. And that's a thing too. So it's kind of interesting, but it's more philosophy than anything else and not very scientific.
Oh yeah, totally.
The voice in my head is more positive than I am, says Chris Miller. Chris Miller, I argue that you should listen to that voice in your head then, my brother. By the way, Chris, let me ask you a question. Here's a question. You said the voice in my head is more positive than I am. Who is the I that you're talking about?
That's always the whole thing, right? Who is the I?
So that's what the mystics will ask you. So ask who the I is, the the actual I that's having the experience. Is it the voice in your head? How can it be? That voice comes and goes, it's transient, you can sedate it.
All right, let's get into this conversation. I want to ask you, what are your thoughts on the guru?
The idea of the guru?
The idea of a guru. And then how you would feel about that, how that may relate to health care, Health 3.0.
Right. So this is interesting.
Doctor is sort of a guru.
A doctor is can be a guru, although of late we've been less of gurus because we're more slaves to the computer.
Right, that's more the Health 1.0.
It's the 1.0, but it can also be the 3.0. What is a true guru? Guru technically means teacher, and doctor also comes from the Latin root docere, which means to teach. So are we teachers? Yes. And a guru has a lot of negative connotations, everything from the movie The Guru with, what's his head, to very bad, crazy gurus like Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh and these other Indian guys. But the truth is a guru can be a spiritual teacher, can be a scientific teacher, can be any kind of teacher. In spiritual circles or meditation circles, a guru is just someone who keeps you on track, who kind of guides your meditations, who reminds you what it is you're trying to do and keeps you real. Sam Harris, in his book, Waking Up, A Guide to Spirituality Without Religion, talks about the nature of gurus and how you have to try to find one that isn't crazy, but that fits your own personality.
Did you watch that documentary I turned you on to, the I Am Not Your Guru?
Yes.
The Tony Robbins
Tony
one?
Robbins, it was amazing.
Yeah, what do you think about What do you think about Tony Robbins?
So Tony Robbins is a classic example of someone who is a guru. And I used to think he was a total two-bit ass clown.
Yeah.
I watched this thing, it was on Netflix, I Am Not Your Guru.
It's amazing.
And you realize, wow, he is a freaking master of reading people, of using empathy to actually manipulate people in a way that actually might be positive, but it's hard to know. But he knows exactly what he's doing. He's incredibly smart. And I was amazed, actually.
They definitely seem to get something out of it at his conference.
Totally. People they're acolytes. And me and my wife watched it, and we were both like, wow, I totally understand why people go and spend a bunch of money to go see his stuff now. Whereas before, I was very skeptical, right? Now, I've been accused by some of being a kind of guru, especially my wife. She's always like, oh, you're trying to be a guru again. I'm like, no. I'm trying to teach what little I've learned, and I'm trying to learn by teaching. That's the thing, because for me, like even trying to explain this article, which is like hurting my head, I want you to read it, guys. It's in the thing, and then explain it to me. But the idea is when I'm reading it, I understand it. It's so hard to put into words what they're trying to say. And sometimes you do have to actually introspect, and it's a subjective thing because it's about consciousness, which means it's about human experience. And the only way we share each other's experiences is through words, and those are limited, right?
Yeah, extremely limited. Like when you asked me about my DMT experience, it was like the most crazy thing in my life. Like there's like a blanket over it in my memory because it was just so insane. I can't describe it in words. I could never tell you what it was really like. I could say all this nonsense and make noises with my mouth.
Right.
But it doesn't describe what it felt like.
So see, but for you, that experience is as real as anything you've ever had.
It's more real. It feels more real than this right now.
Back to this issue. What is the fabric of reality? Experience. Right. Subjectivity, awareness. If something, again, what else is real than our awareness of what is real? I mean, the fact that we're aware. To me, that's the constant, the fabric of everything.
Now this is like something that's been happening more and more with my generation, where we tend to spend more money on experiences rather than things.
Yeah.
Because those experiences actually enrich your life, whereas things take away from your life.
Well, given that we've never found the matter, an atom, what it's made of, actually, that makes this up. This is entirely just made up of experience. The fact is, I see a series of rainbow colors. I feel a cool, plasticky feeling and some pressure, and it has some kind of three-dimensional shape visually to me. It's all experience, right? That doesn't mean it's not real. It's as real as anything, right? Just like a dream to you is hyper real, and people who have lucid dreams who are aware of being aware in a dream, they're aware that they're dreaming. They describe those dreams as hyper realistic.
Yeah.
Because they remember them and they can manipulate them, and they're more real than reality.
The ayahuasqueros say that there's like 9 dimensions, and we're like an onion running through. We're like a spike running through an onion, and there's all these layers, dimensions. They think there's 9 of them. The 5th one is like these really intense dreams. Have you ever felt like you ever had a dream that like wasn't your dream?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with your day that day.
Yeah,
you know, most times dreams are like an amalgam of all the things that happened to you that week or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You ever had just one that was so bizarre?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, my daughter woke up early this morning, woke me up because she had a crazy dream where I had died.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she was panicked and had to come find me. So, I mean, dreams and that, so Buddhists have those levels of reality too.
Yeah.
And they actually have like the animal level, and you go through these things, and the Hindus, of course, with reincarnation and all that. Let's read some comments. That article was great, but I would not be able to express it to someone else. Linguistics get in the way, plus words and stuff. Colleen Garvey. That's exactly it, Colleen. Like, I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about this article today. Then I realized as I was talking about it, I can't explain it. When I read it, it so intuitively felt correct. And it's because, I think it's partially because I've been studying a lot of philosophy lately and looking into like what is the nature of consciousness and meditating. And also I'm a scientist. So all those things combined make this resonate with me. That's why I really want you guys to check it out and tell me what you think. I want your unvarnished conclusions. And it means reading a kind of a long paper that's a little dense, but try. Do me a favor and try and tell me what you think. Let's read some more. For some reason, says Sin T Sui, for some reason the voice in my head sounds like a sassy 35-year-old gay man. I would rely on him whenever I need some tell it like it is encouragement. Sometimes I wonder if I was him in a past life, if past lives exist. Well, the Buddhists would believe that they do exist.
Do you believe in past lives?
I don't know. I think it's hard to have evidence for that, and so I can't really believe. It's belief. It's not like empirical measurement, so I can't really. Emily Ritter, one of my favorite Z-Packers, super smart. You know what the thing about Emily is, and I've said this before, she understands us and expresses verbally what I can't express.
Yeah.
Like sometimes someone will make a comment about one of our videos and be like, well, the thing about this is and Emily will just say, well, actually what I think Z was trying to do was this and this and the other thing, and it's this. But you know, what can I say? And I'll read it and be like, because it's spot on.
Emily's like our advocate.
She is. She really is. So Emily says, a lot of my dreams are long stories without me in them at all. So Emily, that's actually not uncommon. Some people have these very third-party dreams where it's almost like watching a movie, right? By the way, what's the amazing thing about movies? Tom, you're a filmmaker. You went to film school. The amazing thing about movies...
Word.
What's that?
Word up.
Word. The amazing thing about movies is that it's one of the few places where we can sit and watch and experience as unmitigated awareness something happening without any... It's almost voyeuristic. In other words, we're not worried about the thing looking back at us, and we can just watch and experience and lose ourselves in the film. It's like becoming one with the awareness that we are and just watching these and experiencing these images without any baggage associated with it.
Oh, dude, I always tell people that watching a great film, and you'll know this feeling when I describe it, watching a great film is like being picked up, and then when the credits roll, just slam back into your seat. It feels like that.
That's what it's like. I remember the first time I saw The Matrix even.
Oh, yeah.
I was so absorbed. And not only that, but The Matrix is a kind of expression of what we're talking about, that what we think is reality is really something else.
And it doesn't have to be a deep film like The Matrix. I mean, just a great comedy where you're laughing the entire time.
Yeah.
And you look over at your friend, you're like, dude, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen, right? Like
The Big Lebowski, bro.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. You can lose yourself in Lebowski.
Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I was like, that movie seemed like it took 10 minutes because I was laughing at every part of it.
It was totally amazing. Do you still see patients anymore? All the Z-Dog stuff takes a lot of your time. Norin Warat. I see a lot fewer patients on the daily than I used to, so now I round with, I'm in fact switching from University of Nevada, Reno to UNLV, a new medical school here, and I round at the hospital, at our county hospital, UMC, with the residents. But it's much less than I used to, and I don't do it for a living anymore because it would really, I think I'm at this point now where, having practiced for 12 years, seeing patients, I'm at a point now where I think I can do more good in the universe by being a part of this tribe and trying to catalyze this. and making videos and working with Tom on this show and giving all of you guys and me a voice is more helpful than being a replaceable cog in the hospital. But not seeing patients at all is inconceivable to me because it's still my passion and still my love. And you know what? Every time I do it, I get pissed off, I get angry, and I see the failures of the bigger system, and I have a 30,000-foot view, and my level of compassion has gone up exponentially for almost every patient that I see, and it didn't used to be that way when I was stuck in the matrix. So sometimes you have to unplug. We're not as lucky to be able to do that, but I had to pursue what I was passionate about to create the luck and also some of the financial independence by doing talks, doing videos, those kind of things, to be able to do that. So
well, we do make space in the schedules for you to round sometimes. And everything.
Yeah, I mean,
but it is less often. But I mean, I think it still is very important because if you're going to be speaking for everybody on the front lines of healthcare, you still need to get out there on the front lines of healthcare.
Yeah, you have to, and you're not really. But I'll tell you this, Tom. Like a lot of people in clinical medicine who step away, even in part, feel a good deal of kind of embarrassment and shame because they feel like they're not a doctor anymore.
We talked about that during the empathy conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of people felt burnt out, so they left, and they feel guilty.
They feel guilty, and a lot of people, who go into administration and do that, and I think it's compounded by the fact that we treat our medical administrators who are clinical like shit. So we're like, oh, that guy doesn't even see patients anymore. What does he know about anything?
Right.
It's like we have no compassion for people who
That's
are
the basis of some of the comments. You go, do you even doctor anymore?
Yeah.
You just make stupid videos
I get
all day?
it's funny, and I'll be honest with you, those comments no comments hurt my feelings, really, because I'm a public figure and I do internet, but the comments that come closest to hurting my feelings are the ones that are like, do you even see patients anymore? And I'm like, yeah, and I'm all defensive. But the truth is, this is a common thing. Like, as people progress in their careers, they do less clinical and more administrative, right? But they get treated like crap by the clinicians.
But then everybody's like, we need doctors and nurses.
Right. And talk to the clinicians, every single one is like, how the hell do I do less clinical? Because it's so hard to keep it up, especially if there's empathy fatigue, if they're treating a computer instead of, in the old days of Health 1.0, it was much less of a problem, right? And nurses feel the same thing, worse. They're like the canaries in the coal mine because they're on the front lines. They were there with the EHR before we were as docs, right? What do we got here? My grandchild wanted a Barbie for her birthday. Great, but I said, I really want Grandma Donna to take me to the movie Beauty and the Beast. Best gift ever. Donna Allen. Movies are an amazing experience, Donna. Let's scroll down. Ooh. Sometimes it goes both ways, though. They are in administration so long they forget about those on the front line. Julia Navarro. That's true. The worst administrators do that, but the best don't. And actually, I've met some that are like chief medical officers, et cetera, and they are remarkable clinicians, and they're still connected, but they also see how hard it is to run a business, the business of medicine, especially in a Health 2.0 reimbursement structure, right? What else we got here, Tom?
Let's see. Donna Robinson says, I am out of the hospital now as a director of healthcare. Love the job, but feel less than sometimes as a nurse because of it.
I mean, this is true.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of interesting feelings and conflicted emotions that go with stepping away from full-time clinical practice, right? But then the thing is, how do you do things with other passions that relate to medicine if you don't step away? Because if you're seeing patients 24/7, and that's what I did for the first 2 or 3 years of ZDogg Industries, I saw patients full-time and made videos.
Yeah.
Now go back and look at those videos, people, okay? They are not the best videos. Because I did not have the growth or the wisdom to be able to do them. And again, you never step away from clinical entirely, but you do have to wind it back.
Pam says, can you talk about global health problems on this? I think she just means in general on your live cast.
Global health? You mean like around the world?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and we're going to, but it's better when we have experts. Now, speaking of experts, tomorrow, Sunday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern, Against Medical Advice is going to have a special episode with a guest, Kathy Trevnicek. I think that's how you say her name.
We will ask Kathy
We've never
tomorrow.
met, but she reached out to me. She moved to Vegas. She's a pain specialist, trains at Johns Hopkins, physical med and rehab, and then specialized in pain. And she has a perspective on the opioid epidemic and chronic pain management that is going to be fascinating, not just to our viewers, but to me. And it's going to be a thrill to have her on the show because she's going to open up a lot of interesting conversation and I think teach us a lot. So come and join us for Against Medical Advice, which is our more serious weekly episode.
We're going to be wearing suits, people.
Oh,
Plus,
hell.
be nice to Kathy. It's her first time on camera, okay? I don't want to see none of you being mean.
She's really nervous because she's never been on camera before, but the truth is, I had the phone conversation with her, and I'm like, she is going to crush it because she knows her ish. And that's what we care about, Z-Pack. Like, me and Tom can be charismatic, but we need some damn science.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, this conversation makes me want to do shrooms, so I'm going to do those.
Oh, hell yeah. No, don't do that. Do not do that. All right. So Cindy Bernard says, this wasn't serious? Oh, consciousness is a joke, Cindy. It's a total joke. We know that. Now, let me see if there's anything else I wanted to...
Listen, guys, sometimes it's going to be Xena McDrag or Doc Vader, and sometimes it's going to be the nature of consciousness. You know, that's just how we're going to rock it.
I'm going to read one paragraph from this, okay, to sum up. Okay, the knowledge he or she acquires will be non-relational knowledge of what redness is like in and of itself. In other words, imagining the color red is a fundamental experience of red, right? This suggests that consciousness of some primitive and rudimentary form is the hardware that the software of the physical world runs on. In other words, the brain is actually software that runs on the hardware of consciousness itself, not the other way around. And I think that, if it doesn't blow your mind, we're missing something totally in how I'm explaining it. Am I wrong, Tom Heineberg?
Dude,
Probably.
you are so right. You've never been more right. Couldn't get more right. Z for the win, y'all.
Like our podcast, subscribe to it, review it, leave comments. I'm going to read through these comments later and try to respond to as many as I can that aren't, "Hey Z, we love you from Peoria," which I love too. And I read those, but I don't respond because what do I say? I love you too from Vegas. And tune in tomorrow, and we are out.
Alexander Wu says Tom needs to come in drunk or high. Your wish is my command, Alexander.
Go, 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 go. I'm I. Uh-huh.